Abby Marshall. My field experience took place over at East High, and I had the opportunity to work in two ESL classes. An ESL 1 class where the students were roughly WIDA level 1 or 2, and then an ESL 2 class where the students were roughly WIDA level 3 or 4. Because the majority of my examples come from the ESL 1 class, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the dynamics of that class. There were about 15 to 18 students, and they were predominantly Spanish speakers. But there were at least 3 students from West Africa and at least 2 whose native language was Mandarin. The teacher had her desks in groups of 5, and she never had her students sit in the same desk twice. So when group work came, these students were always speaking with someone new, and because students whose primary language was Swahili couldn't communicate in their primary language with someone who spoke Spanish, they had to rely on their English language learning to accomplish cooperative assignments. The teacher herself, she had a whole bunch of languages under her belt, and so she would also try to supplement her students' learning experience in their primary language as much as possible and to the best of her ability. And it was really cool to see how effective that was, because I know that's often up for debate, especially right now. This first example, a little context, the teacher brought in a viral video she found on Facebook about a girl with muscular dystrophy. It's one of those videos where there's words printed on the video, and so there's nothing to listen to. So she would put the video up and pause it, read the words to the students, read them with the students, and have the students repeat it back to her. The first sentence of the video was, "This girl with muscular dystrophy makes amazing paintings." And this student from West Africa pronounced it, "This girl with muscular dystrophy makes amazing paintings." So right off the bat, we notice the student favoring the alveolar plosive "d" in place of a dental fricative "th" or "th", as in the and with. That's just a matter of bringing the tongue forward and practicing those voiced versus unvoiced fricatives, because we don't have evidence that she can do one voiced versus unvoiced. Additionally, she favors the short A or open front A sound versus the mid-closed front A sound. She did say it in makes, and so it just took a little better practice. Eventually she was saying amazing paintings, but it was hard for her, which was interesting because she didn't struggle with saying makes. Lastly, and I attribute this slight mispronunciation to the nature of the word. I doubt the student had ever encountered muscular dystrophy in their primary language, let alone English. So using the alveolar approximant sound instead of the lateral alveolar approximant, very minor. We talked about in class how other cultures will come and try to learn to pronounce that sound and struggle, and that's the word that comes out. So by the end of the class and by the end of the video, she was able to say muscular just fine. Context for the second example, we were in groups talking about the books the students had to take home and read and bring back. The student was writing out their response, and I asked them to explain what this word was because I didn't know the word. And they told me it was the name of the author, but they said the name of the author. So similar issues to the first student, the alveolar plosive "d" versus the voiced dental fricative "th", as in the. Additionally, there is that dental plosive "t" instead of the unvoiced dental fricative as in author. Just again, bringing the tongue forward, but at least here we know the student, the "t" sound is rather close to an unvoiced fricative. And so once we get that tongue in the right place, we know they can pronounce voiced and unvoiced dental fricatives. This strange vowel, I hope I conveyed it appropriately, because what the student was doing was trying to read the word author and trying to read the A and the U. So author happened. They ended up with a vowel sound that was like mid-open back and not quite right. So after correcting and repeating it back to me a couple of times, author, they were able to get it. It didn't seem to be a trend. But it was another example of how English doesn't make sense for students. This written example comes from the ESL 2 class. Because they were so proficient in their speaking, you really could only see that they were English language learners in their writing. And this particular example was in response to a sentence we read about history and how it's bleeding. So we talked a lot about figurative language and versus literal language. And the student wrote, a big idea about this poem is the history. It talks about how the humans and the wars are hurting and killing the people. So right off the bat, I was immediately impressed. This was a very simple sentence followed by a little more complex sentence. They conveyed their idea just fine, actually. So because the teacher was requiring a more college-appropriate submission, though, I did talk to them about using an alternative article, the, so that we could be more specific, and how the is more specific than a. We also talked about the vague pronoun it, and how it doesn't necessarily tell me what is talking. Is it the history? Is it the poem? Is it the idea? Lastly, the sentence is a little wordy and almost a run-on, and we decided that was because the student had two subjects, the humans and the wars. So after we helped the student to pick just one, we were able to say that it talks about how the wars are killing and hurting people, and that could have been resolved in a number of ways. But there you go. Thank you.